Across the ruins of Europe, church bells rang for peace. Rifles fired into the air, banners waved, and for millions, the war was finally over. But not for everyone. In the shadows of shattered train yards, a group of young German women stood waiting, not for freedom, but for captivity. Their uniforms hung loose, their boots cracked, their faces streaked with soot and fear. Secretaries, nurses, radio operators, cogs in a machine that had devoured their country, and now collapsed in their hands. What happened next is one of history's strangest, quietest stories. A story not of cruelty, but of kindness. And how kindness can wound deeper than hate. They were told the Americans would not spare them. That captivity meant humiliation. That Allied soldiers were beasts in human skin. So when the trains began to move west, rumbling through a burned-out Germany, fear wrapped around them tighter than their tattered coats. Towns passed like ghosts, blackened steeples, collapsed bridges, children waving with hollow eyes. One woman, Anna, wrote in a diary she hid beneath her coat, "My mother will think I am dead. Perhaps I will be." But when the train reached the coast, Bremen, Le Havre, Cherbourg, something unexpected awaited them. Not dungeons or chains, ships, large American vessels, engines humming, flags fluttering in the Atlantic wind. They were herded aboard, hundreds of them, and for the first time, the women realized they were not being punished. They were being transported, somewhere far beyond their imagination, across the ocean, to America. The voyage was long and silent. Seasickness took many. The air smelled of diesel and salt. Then, one morning, they saw it, rising through the mist, a skyline untouched by war. New York City. The Statue of Liberty glimmered in the dawn light, and not one of them smiled. To them, it was not a symbol of freedom, but of defeat. Crowds watched from the docks as they disembarked, pale, thin, exhausted, their eyes hollow from hunger and years of propaganda. They were loaded onto buses and trains again, this time across green fields and small towns that looked impossibly clean. America, prosperous, intact. At last, they arrived at camps built for prisoners of war. Fort Oglethorpe, Camp Ruston, and others scattered across the South. Fences surrounded them. Yes, but there were no beatings, no snarling dogs, no shouting guards. Just order, paperwork, rules. Then came the showers. They had been told that the Americans used showers for punishment, a memory twisted by the nightmares of their own regime. So when the guards ordered them inside tiled rooms and handed them bars of soap, many froze in terror. Anna wrote that night, "We were told we would be mocked, broken. Instead, we were given soap. How can this be?" Hot water cascaded down, real towels, clean clothes. For the first time in years, they felt human again, and it terrified them. The next morning, the women were marched to a mess hall. The smell of coffee and fresh bread filled the air. On the tables, real food. Stew, potatoes, butter. They hesitated. Some wept. One whispered, "My brothers starved in the snow, and here they feed us like this." They had braced for cruelty. What they received instead was something much harder to bear. Dignity. Days turned into weeks. They worked in laundries, in fields, in kitchens. They were paid small wages, money that could buy chocolate, cigarettes, even lipstick. To women who had lived through bombings and hunger, these were miracles. Yet with every kindness, guilt grew heavier. Letters from home spoke of rubble, starvation, and death. Anna wrote, "I eat and my body thanks me." But each kindness cuts deeper. To be treated with dignity by those we were taught to hate, it is unbearable. The war had ended, but inside these camps, another battle began. A quiet war between memory and truth, between what they had believed and what they were now forced to see. At night, the women lay awake, listening to the crickets instead of bombs. And somewhere deep within, an unsettling thought took root. Perhaps the enemy was not what they were told. Perhaps the real war was not on the battlefield, but in the mind. Anna's diary ends months later with one final line. "The soap is gone. The bread is eaten. But the question remains. If the enemy can show such kindness, then what does that make of us?" The story of those women is rarely told. They came expecting brutality, and were undone by mercy. History remembers battles, leaders, victories, but sometimes it's the quiet acts, a meal, a shower, a bar of soap, that haunt the longest. Because kindness can rewrite everything we think we know about war. If this story moved you, subscribe for more untold human stories from the ruins of history.